Yesterday at 6:47 p.m, police had received reports of shots being fired near Bondi Beach. Shots were fired from a footbridge towards people at Parkland Bondi Beach, where the Jewish festival of Hanukkah took place. Footage emerged where one of the shooters was incapacitated from a bystander.
Oh!
C'est un malade.
Oh non, gros! Oh!
Ouais, mais il y a son pote, il va se faire tirer dessus. Il est trop con, le mec qui a l'arme.
Le mec il est hyper courageux. Oh!
Wesh.
The man's name is Ahmed Al-Ahmed, a Syrian national who served in the police. The father of two is currently in hospital after sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. His condition has been described as critical but stable. It has now been confirmed there were two shooters who are father and son. They've been named as Sajid Akram, 50 years old, and his son Naveed Akram, 24. The father was shot dead by police, and his son is currently in hospital in critical condition. Inside the gunman's car, two ISIS flags were found, according to an official. We have more information about the two shooters. Sajid Akram was a licensed firearms holder, having met the eligibility criteria for a recreational hunting license. He was linked to 6 firearms, all of which were believed to have been used in the Bondi Beach attack. Lanyon said he arrived in 1998 on a student visa. Home Minister Tony Burke said, without specifying from where. The visa was transferred in 2001 to a partner visa and later resident returned visas. His son Naveed Akram is an Australian-born citizen. Prime Minister Albanese said he had first come to the attention of authorities in October 2019. He had been examined on the basis of being associated with others, Albanese said, and the assessment was made that there was no indication of any ongoing threat or threat of him engaging in violence. I mean, this does seem to happen all of the time, where authorities will know about these people or will have their suspicions and then wait until something horrific happens. Now, it has been reported that 15 people, including a 10-year-old girl, were killed. The police have declared this a terrorist attack. This is the biggest mass shooting since 1996, when 35 people were murdered in Tasmania. Now, shootings are very rare in Australia, but what is a regular occurrence is the political weaponization of a horrific mass killing. As always, people have speculated with their pre-existing biases before all the information was released. The right wing have already come to the conclusion that all Muslims pose a threat, and even though this seemingly looks like an extremist Islamist terror attack, Ahmed Al-Ahmed, the father and hero who stopped one of the gunmen, is also a Muslim. Yet many have still used this as an opportunity to spread their bigotry. Broadcaster and security expert who goes by the name of Daniel tweeted a picture of a Muslim reporter questioning why this was allowed. Of course, they were just simply doing their job. Right-wing journalist Peter Lloyd tweeted a list of attacks committed by Muslims. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire list, but you get his point, right? Yet somebody else has helpfully reminded him about all the attacks committed by Christians. Now, Nigel Farage sickeningly weaponized this attack, and he said, if Keir Starmer was really concerned with the hatred and violence against Jewish people, he would ban the Muslim Brotherhood. A man who's been accused of multiple allegations of anti-Semitic bullying as a teen, something in which he still hasn't properly addressed, should probably sit this one out. Now, are any of us surprised that Stephen Yaxley Lennon, also known by his fake name Tommy Robinson, got involved. Of course not. Strange that apologists are trying to downplay the massacre of Jews on an Australian beach because the guy who grabbed the gun was a Muslim also. Ahmed grabbed the gun because he's a brave man. The two gunmen killed 15 Jews because of Islam. Hope this clears that up for you. I mean, look how transparent the far right are being. He's literally admitting that if a Muslim does a good thing, it's down to the individual. If they do a bad thing, it must be Islam. The reality, it's always down to the individual. Most Christians, most Muslims, people in other faiths, most atheists are good people. It's the no true Scotsman fallacy in reverse. Zach Polanski, who was Jewish, by the way, posted a tweet condemning the attack, yet ultra-Zionist Jake Wallace-Simons took issue to it. I'm on my way to a Hanukkah event. It should be a celebration, but instead our community is once again mourning. I will be thinking of everyone in Australia and those around the world in the Jewish community who know this fear and loss. We stand with you. Jake Wallace-Simons quote tweeted with, "Not now, Zach. Zach, a Jewish man is not allowed to speak up for the Jewish community, according to Simons, because he doesn't support Israel's genocide." Of course, what we all expected, opportunists are linking opposing the ethnic cleansing and slaughter of Palestinians to the killing of Jewish people. Ban all pro-Palestine demonstrations. They are a gateway to terrorism. Labour MP Alex Davis-Jones went on Sky News and joined in on the weaponisation.
I guess, the question as well is, does the government need to do more? Do you need to take a tougher line? Because, chants like from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, globalise the Intifada, you hear this stuff. If you go to certain music concerts, if you go to certain protests, you will hear that.
And I want to be very, very clear that chants like that, any chants that are designed to intimidate, call for violence, call for the murder of Jews are totally unacceptable. And the government has introduced new legislation in order to protect religious places of worship, because anyone who is seeking to protest outside of those venues needs to be very mindful of what they're doing. And I will defend the right to protest. The government will. It is a fundamental right of democracy. And there is a lot of people who are feeling very, very hurt about the actions of certain governments around the world right now, and they have a fundamental right to protest. What they do not have is a right to intimidate British citizens or call for violence in our streets, because sadly, we have seen the consequences of what happens when that is done.
Now, Sophie Ridge is also engaging in propaganda too. I mean, globalise the Intifada means globalising the struggle against oppression, not killing Jews. From the river to the sea is about Palestine being free from occupation, not killing Jews. But that doesn't matter to the establishment. Sky News have form. Trevor Phillips interviewed Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister with zero pushback.
You've just said, Ms. Haskell, that governments around the world, including the Australian government, could have done more to tackle anti-Semitism. What would you have expected them to do to prevent or anticipate this kind of attack?
Well, fight racism, fight violence against Jewish community, fight racism in workplaces as strong as possible. Look, when you see those hate march in the streets, whether it's London or Sydney, and in the Sydney Opera House, they chanted, "Gas the Jews, gas the Jews." Not even a single arrest, not even a single person who had to answer for that, but they tried to cover that. When you hear them chanting to globalize the Intifada, what do you think that means? Globalizing the Intifada mean exactly that. To go on massacres, shooting people in the streets, to violently attack them. This is what it means. And if you let that continue and run in your street, waving flags of terrorists, pictures of people who murdered innocent children, if you don't fight it, in your silence, you actually support that. You justify that. And to globalize the Intifada means exactly that. A terrorist attack on a beach in Australia where Australian civilians are being murdered and killed. This is what it means. So when you hear that, start acting, enforcing, persecuting, punishing, so that people understand this is absolutely unacceptable. No racism, no violence will be accepted, not in Australia and not in the UK either.
But okay in Israel, though. I mean, Israel should be nowhere near this. Talking to ministers from a terrorist state currently committing a genocide, talking about racism and violence. Are you serious? It's appalling. No surprise, but the BBC also platformed Gideon Falter, a Zionist agitator and chief executive of the bogus campaign against anti-Semitism.
What do you want to see politicians here doing?
Well, Sir Keir Starmer said in the aftermath of the attack on Yom Kippur in Manchester, where 2 Jews were killed, we heard him say that he would do everything in his power to tackle this hatred, to fight back, and yet nothing has been done. The marches on our streets continue. The incitement, both on our campuses and on social media, continues unabated. We see this unbelievable two-tier policing where people standing up against extremism are being arrested, and the extremists themselves are being appeased by police forces who seem too timid to tackle the mobs in front of them. So what we really need from politicians is the kind of assertiveness that unfortunately has had to see us through many a crisis in the West before, where they name exactly what it is that we're fighting against, and they say, we will do whatever it takes, but then equip our police forces and, if necessary, our security services to take firm action, because at the moment that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing security services which are overwhelmed. We're seeing police forces where even after what happened in Manchester, we're seeing West Midlands police now being hauled into Parliament again because they decided it was simpler to ban Jewish and Israeli football fans from Aston Villa rather than actually police events properly. This sort of thing is all symptomatic of a rot that goes right to the top, and we've had 2 successive governments now since October 7th where they've seen the extremism really spilling out onto our streets, people celebrating all sorts of barbarity and depravity, and failing abjectly to make sure that our security services do what needs to happen, make sure that our police forces actually enforce the law. And unfortunately, we are the days where we can say things like, well, we're referring people to prevent, and we are, we're doing a risk assessment and we're taking things seriously and doing whatever's in our power. Those days are over. We now need to see action, and we need to see extremists, unfortunately, really being tackled and rounded up well before these attacks take place, not afterwards, as seems to be yet again happening here.
Okay, Gideon Falter, thank you.
Is he serious? He's saying the police are appeasing extremists, doing nothing about it. We're locking up grannies, for fuck's sake. We literally have thousands of people being locked up for holding signs saying, I oppose genocide, I support. These people, innocent people, older people, younger people, holding up signs because they're opposing a state which is ethnically cleansing Palestinian people. And the police are arresting them. There are currently hunger strikers where those are not going to be seen a court date for another 14 months. They're starving. They're dying, according to doctors. And this guy wants to say, oh, actually, the police are appeasing them. How about the fact that we're sending weapons to Israel? We've got fighter jets out there or surveillance jets out there. We're giving excuses to them. But we're coming down hard on Israel. I mean, this is the so-called pro-Hamas BBC, right? They had Gideon Falter on. Gideon Falter, who you'll remember last year, was a agitator. He said, I just want to be a pro-Israel march. No, there was a pro-Palestine march, and he tried crossing the road and causing disruption. There were literal Mossad agents around him, by the way. And the BBC are just platforming him, not pushing back, just saying that actually this is hate on the streets. And to those who say the pro-Palestine marches, the ceasefire marches, are full of hatred and bigotry and racism, making claims that gas the Jews are apparently shouted there. I mean, first of all, no one brought any evidence of that. And yes, there might be 1 or 2 fucking idiots. You get that everywhere. But are you going to say the same about the Jewish people and the Jewish bloc at these pro-Palestine marches? Are you going to call these Jewish people anti-Semitic? Of course they will, because Zionists do that all the time. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu also weighed in. Netanyahu also blames the attack partly on Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for recognising a Palestinian state. He literally said that. He said that because Australia recognised Palestine as a state, they were complicit in this terrorist attack. You do not fight extremism with extremism. What happened yesterday was a disgusting, horrific extremist attack, but you don't then provide cover for a state that's committing genocide. That is extremism too. Helena, obviously absolutely devastating what happened. And my God, a 10-year-old girl was killed as well among 15 people. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the first thing I would say is that one of the reactions, it seems, that's coming out of Australia in response to this is that it looks like there is bipartisan support for stricter gun regulations. That can only be a good thing if that passes. Even the kind of the wackier elements of the right wing in Australia seem to want to acquiesce to those common sense gun reforms to try and ensure that people who do have history of being sympathetic to the Islamic State can somehow get a firearms license and have 6 firearms in the household. So there's more background checks. It looks like having a limit on the number of firearms people can store in the home. And I hope that legislation passes so that we can prevent these things from happening again. It's very difficult to prevent people who are susceptible to becoming an extremist from thinking those things and wanting to act on them. But you can take material steps to prevent them from having access to the things they need to have to facilitate the evil that they want to do. I do hope that legislation passes. Some of the reactions that I have seen have been some of those despicable reactions I think I've ever seen. That Jake Wallace-Simons tweet is probably the cream of the crop, I think, in saying to another Jewish man that he's not allowed to mourn the anti-Semitic massacre of his Jewish brethren because he has a different opinion on the state of Israel for being a Bundist rather than a Zionist is the most disgusting. I cannot put into words how absolutely fucking rancid it is from Jake Wallace-Simons, just all day tweeting at people who've never said anything anti-Semitic, who have no anti-Semitic bones in their body, who've never said anything about Israel other than we oppose the ideology of Zionism, and somehow saying that they're not allowed to express grief, to want to show sympathy and solidarity with the people who have been massacred in this clearly anti-Semitic terror attack because they disagree with him about the existence of the State of Israel, or even in some cases, the actions of the State of Israel. Who, after fucking AOC, who voted for the Iron Dome funding bill, or abstained on the Iron Dome funding bill, right? She believes in a two-state solution, just like most people do, just like Anthony Albanese does, who clapped back at Netanyahu, saying somehow the recognition of Palestine was a reason why these attacks happened. And Albanese has been very forthright and going back against Netanyahu for saying such things, which is at least something to see. And it's just crazy that in the wake of this, they've just allowed people to come on and just spread lies. Like Gideon Falter saying things such as the stuff that he said in the BBC, which wasn't actually in truth that he was saying about banning Jews from football matches. That didn't happen. There was no ethnic or even necessarily national component in the people who were banned from the Maccabi Tel Aviv game. They were banned based upon the fact that they were supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv. That was it. Jews were not banned. Jews turned up and went to the game, and they brandished Israel flags, as is their right at the event. And there was no problems with ultra violence at the event. But obviously he's allowed to go on TV and lie because these people never get policed in terms of the things that they say. You have an Israeli deputy foreign minister when the lead party in government in Israel believes in full ethnic cleansing of Palestine. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, apparently is anti-Semitic, when all it means is that the occupation ends. Yet the Likud party charter, which specifies that Israel must stretch from the river to the sea, and as a component of that, there's an ethnic component because it is an ethno-state, it's codified in Israeli law from the nation-state law, that it is an ethno-state. So that seizure of that land, the annexation of that territory to create an Israeli state from the river to the sea necessitates the expulsion and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. The reverse does not. And yet she is allowed to come on British TV and accuse people who believe in a one-state solution, who believe in a unitary Palestinian state, which does not have an ethnic component to it, not like people try and claim that a Palestinian state would mean Jews leaving the Levant, because it clearly does not. I mean, not even Hamas say that it does. You know, Osama Hamdan specifically said that anyone can live in a future Palestinian state as long as they obey the laws, regardless of their ethnicity. Right? What it does do is mean that there is no ethno-state and there is no colonial occupation. But Likud do want an ethno-state, and they do eventually want to ethnically cleanse Palestinians. And she is allowed, as a member of a government that is led by that party, to somehow condemn people who are calling for the liberation of Palestine as people who should be, have their free speech shut down by law. That's what she was implying with her statement there. Ridiculous conflation and weaponization of what is an absolutely ghastly and incredibly upsetting terror attack that the whole world should be showing solidarity with, because rather than trying to weaponize for political gain. That's why I haven't tried at any point to do that myself, because it's the most. I don't know how anyone can do it. I don't know how anybody can weaponize this stuff for political gain. Honestly, it really disgusts me. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, that Jake Wallace-Simons comment is probably the worst. I mean, he is a rancid person. It is absolutely disgusting. It was so anti-Semitic. I saw a comment actually from someone who said, the shooting was not an anti-Semitic attack; it was an anti-Zionist attack. No, it was an anti-Semitic attack. I mean, gunning down Jewish people, going to a Jewish event and gunning down Jewish people is anti-Semitic. And if if there was a link between that and what's happening in Palestine, if those people did that because of what's happening in Palestine, that's even more anti-Semitic, because once again, as we say, you cannot conflate Jewish people with the state of Israel. It was fundamentally an anti-Semitic attack. And anti-Semitism is on the rise. Yet, I mean, this attack shouldn't have happened, but the fact that it happened, at least we can do is mourn the people who lost their lives. A 10-year-old girl was killed. She doesn't get to live the rest of her life out because some disgusting, depraved individual with their dad. I mean, I don't know who shot the killing shot, but two disgusting individuals killed a little girl, and we can't even mourn it because there are right-wingers and there are Zionists who want to immediately make this an issue about Israel, want to immediately condemn all Muslims, despite the fact that one of them was a hero who tackled the shooters to the ground. Really depraved stuff.
It is, and the thing as well is that, I mean, Jordan Shanks, who's an Australian commentator, brought this up in his video about the topic, saying, well, all those people who say, well, like, there doesn't need to be an Israeli ethno-state for Jewish people in Palestine. Well, you've just given an argument to every single person who believes that there should, because the main argument is that Jews aren't safe unless they live in the ethno-state. That's exactly the argument. And is it really difficult to kind of disagree with the plight of Jewish people in Western countries when they get killed in terrorist attacks, right? None of us believe that a colonial ethno-state is a good idea, but the argument that they make is that they need it to be safe. And if we can't guarantee safety of Jewish people in our countries by shutting down the kind of anti-Semitism that links Israel and the broader international Jewish community together, and it implicates Jews in the crimes of Israel, then they will continue to make that argument and they will continue migrating to Palestine. That's the reality. If we can't guarantee these people's safety, and we have to shut that shit down immediately, no matter who is saying it, right? This link, this conflation between broader international Jewish community and the project of Zionism, this has to end, and it has to end now.